Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire, or in this case, more other parts of the Malazan world. Anyway, we're here with the second part of Book 2 of Dust of Dreams. I'm slightly scatterbrained because I had to help a friend move apartment today, and I just came back, and I hope I remember all the things that I wanted to talk about. We'll see how that goes, and we'll also see how things go from there with like stuff that happens tomorrow and Friday and Saturday and so forth. I have some plans and I will do the mead thing. I just need to figure out what to talk about because I don't feel Malazan is the perfect thing when we're making mead because that's not like the number one beverage I associate with the Malazan world. Anyway, not my point right now. So let's get into Dust of Dreams. Cheers. Well, so we're once again following that structure that we had in the entirety of book 1 of Dust of Dreams, which means in this case, even chapters are all kinds of people, and the odd chapters are the Malazan chapters. The chapter, in this case 9, follows once again stuff that happens in Letheras, and well, we're going from there. And in chapter 10, we are back with stuff that happens with, the Bargas, the Sheikh, all these other people that are apparently also important. So let's have a look at what happens with the Malazans and Lothari, shall we? All right, first of all, we had that part going on with the little at the court with Bug and Tehol on the one hand, and Janath and Shurk Elal, and now also the 14th daughter, that famed 14th daughter of King Tarkalf of Bolkando, and her handmaiden. So apparently, I mean, the one thing that I feel is important to look at here is once again at how Stephen Erickson looks at gender roles and how these things work, or like the way he portrays like interactions between the genders in a way. So that that's kind of that that is the depiction of that like careful playing around each other kind of thing. That yeah, where basically Tehol and Bok basically notice that Churk and Janath are putting on that mock fight, that fight to get them out of the way so they can do their intrigue thing and hire Shurk to bring back Felash, Selash, not Selash, but Felash, whatever. Falash, I I don't know. Anyway, to bring her back, and they are aware of that, and then all that stuff around that. It's just a little fun episode here to get like introduce us to those different characters. I feel the interactions between Shurk and Falash are interesting as well. The way they dress, the idea of almost overstating sexuality in a way. I feel there's the whole like longer-ish essay on these kind of depictions and stuff like that in the Malazan world. I'm not sure if I'm qualified to do that though. We'll see. But yeah, that not nothing really big important happening here for a moment, but it's entertaining in a way. But then we get to the more serious stuff. That is, we get, once again, a bunch of these different soldiers, Malazan soldiers, that are hanging around and trying to, fight boredom, get angry, all of that stuff. There's a few interesting things going on there. We have that long part about Deadsmel's past, which I found very like interesting. The whole thing with the priest of Fenner dying and his soul being taken by Hood, and Hood being not really happy about having that job. The idea of sorrow there, the description of how necromancy works, how the necromancer is like the true worshipper of Hood because he knows that death is inevitable, and the game of necromancy is all about cheating death and knowing the like the final failure that entails in the end, because everyone has to die, or almost everyone. Um, but yeah, being aware of that honesty in worship, I feel that's once again one of the things that I feel are interesting, because on the one hand there is that reciprocity between believers and gods, because believers have power over gods as well, but on the other hand there's no actual like signed bargain in a way, which is a thing that you had, for example, like sort of had in at least Greek antiquity, where worship of gods that lacked efficacy certainly tended to dwindle, when it's like, yeah, you god of healing, you don't work, I'll just go and find a different one. So there was that kind of compact in a way, because things are more like, I don't know, I guess less direct than in the Malazan world, where gods actually exist. But um, here this is the case that piety doesn't get you anything. It may make your god happy, but there's no guarantee he will like actually care. So there that whole concept on the how necromancy works was something that I found once again very interesting, and also once again to see that Hood is like, yes, he is one of those gods or people that took on this role, the personification of a natural force that is by definition once again very much I don't know, random in a way, but doesn't adhere to concepts like justice. So Hood, being a human, or in this case a Jaghat, as we know, um, adheres to notions of justice in a way, um, as a person. But in his role, he can't actually pay any attention to that. So he has to just, do that job. Which, once again, is one of the things that we see, for example, a Death in Discworld also struggle with, but in a different way, obviously. So yeah, I felt that was an interesting bit to look at. Also, the conversation Dead Smell then has with Bottle about immediacy in a way, need immediacy, living in the present. Um, that also kind of feels like a like almost like an addendum to that, and we'll see where that will all take us in the future. But yeah, the idea of that actually we as humans are very much like animals, and do basically have that fear that we are nothing more than just living in the present, because all the rest is basically illusions. Also, I guess the really short conversation that we had with the Fiddler and Cuttle about Hedge, and Fiddler's problems with the Hedge returned, or dead Hedge, is like it's like a very human thing. It's like this idea that you get over grief, or because that's what grief does. Like, if we're able to grieve, what we do is we try to get over things. We try to leave things behind, find some kind of closure, and if that very personal, very not troubling, but very emotionally intense process is then basically declared unnecessary, or made like void of meaning in a way, that can certainly harm us a lot. It's like, yeah, just an interesting dynamic there with those two, I guess, in a way. But what I wanted to go for more was, I guess, the whole conversation that Fiddler, like the almost monologue that Fiddler has with Bryce and Cuttle on the bridge. First of all, there's obviously that idea when they, present all these gifts to that tribe, that story he tells, and they then all die of, like, not all, but a lot of them die of some kind of sickness they weren't used to. And that obviously, harkens back to that whole idea of the smallpox blankets that were deliberately used as weapons, apparently, in the past, by settlers in North America. But in this case, it was not. It was not actually deliberate to kill all these people on that island. It just was an accident. And the point there, once again, was that it doesn't really matter. Like, motives are, I guess, important, but the results are what really counts. And that idea that Fiddler then comes to is this clear-eyed, like, acceptance that like a lot of stuff that we do has the wrong results. A lot of the things that we do, and like a lot of life is a rather depressing kind of situation, like where we find ourselves in life. And then the fact that all of this doesn't really matter. What you do in the end is you try to do the right thing, because that's basically what makes you human in a way. It's that whole like part that he goes through, that it can lead you into like really dark places if you see the world realistically, but you can still try to do the right thing in that situation. And then Bryce goes, and that's the place where heroes come from. And the important bit then obviously is that Fiddler answers him that no, that also doesn't matter, which is exactly the point. It's like you do that because it's the right thing. And even if the results are terrible, you do the right thing, because that's what you need to do as I guess, once again, as the thing that makes you human, that makes you compassionate, for example, because that's sort of the point there. Then the compassion is the important thing, which, in that story happens when they find out what happens, that they then send all their healers in and try to actually fight that disease. Fight that disease. So there's that. I feel that's another one of those really important aspects of the of that Malazan ethos that we're talking about, or will be talking about more and more at this point, because we are coming to that part in the overall plot. And we're not plot, but in the overall like series, where we realize what the Malazans as a group, what makes them so unique in a way. And it's all these aspects. I mean, yes, there's the military like prowess, they're really good soldiers, but the question obviously always is like, is this just skill with weapons, or what else makes them so unique as a group? And it's like things like this that you have, at least with some of these soldiers, you have that very clear-eyed awareness that Fiddler describes there. So yeah, there's that. Then we also obviously have that situation with the Letheri recruits and Lieutenant Master Sergeant Paws, who, that whole like thing he has going on with Kindly is obviously a lot of fun to look at. But my point that I wanted to look at is the situation with Sergeant Sunrise, who, and this is like the interesting bit there. It's like you see him and he's like, the way he's described, he is ridiculous. He probably is not the smartest knife in the drawer, not the sharpest knife in the drawer there. He is a lot of these things. And the way that Ruffle in the end talks to him and explains that his new name should be Sunrise, because he like actually gets like a new start every time, like the sunrise. This once again is one of those really like shows this idea of like loyalty, looking out for each other, helping each other in a way, even though you might not like that person very much. It's like they're your fellow soldiers. You do that kind of thing, and if it helps the guy, then and it does. That's that idea of compassion there in like very small scale there. And that's, I feel, another one of these like small but very important moments, human moments within the Malazan Book of the Fallen. All right, then let's go and look at other people. And let's go to the Barghast, because now we come to a very interesting, or not interesting, but like very important aspect. We first have that part where that like the snake hunter clan gets obliterated, but with what is important is the part before, when we have their like war leader being this very small-minded, angry, because he has lost a lot of stuff like in life overall, this very unsuccessful and thus extremely angry person. And I feel it's important to look at that, to see that, small-minded anger, jealousy, like anger fueled by jealousy, hatred fueled by jealousy, is something that you can find in all places of life, right? This is the important bit. Then this will become even more important later on. It's like he's a small-minded, unsuccessful person, but that's the kind of people that then turn to try to find some kind of scapegoat for their like perceived low station, or like the injustice of the universe. They find a scapegoat, or they try to find a scapegoat, and it's whether it's those damn foreigners taking our jobs, which in a way can be Tool, who is a foreigner, and he took the rightful job of all those other we want to be war leader dudes. You can see it that way if you want, but that's how things like in a way like racism, xenophobia, hatred, how that stuff comes from this like trying to find a scapegoat for the injustices of the world. But sometimes you're not to blame, but no one else is to blame either. It's just like the world is fucked, and accepting that is obviously not not easy, but it's good to be aware, like important to be aware that this kind of like these mechanisms, these ways of how people work, they can happen in every single society. This is not just something that can happen with, I don't know, people in so-called civilized nations, right? This can happen everywhere, this kind of small-minded hatred. And then we see that like the next element of that we see with Stolman's wife, Sikara the Vile, who is an abominable person. She is like, and this is the other thing, is like she is so much closer to like the mindset of some of those people we met at Reaper Scale, some of those Letheri like people in the Patriotists, or the Chancellor, or someone like that. The people that are living for just the gathering of power, have no scruples whatsoever, and are cruel because they think they deserve the world. Your Karos Invictats and people like that. Obviously, in her case, a lot of this takes a much more I don't know, brutal side, because that's the cultural background she has with the Barghast, which is a warrior society, a rather like like rather physical society in a way. And so her like the window dressings of her display of power and her power games is a different one from the one that people like Karos Invictad and the Chancellor Triban Ganal played. But it's in the end, it's the same kind of games. It's the same kind of personality. And this is important to acknowledge, because just, and it's I feel it's vital that we first see this kind of behavior with the people in Letheras, the so-called civilized people. Then we go to the so-called barbarians, and we just see the same thing there because it's human nature. And there's nothing, not nothing, but there's like there are those people and have always been in those cultures, and depending on like the cultural ways around that, we get like a first description of the hobbling. That kind of thing can take extremely graphic, extremely brutal forms, right? Where, well, I mean, to be fair, we had those situations where Triban Gnoll punished the families of people that he was disappointed by, getting some of them sold into slavery, well, indebtedness, and raping their children, which is comparable to the idea of the hobbling of, giving those women all over to the entire clan to rape. It's I don't want to, say one of them is worse than the other, because at that point we're just playing a numbers game that doesn't work. The point is, both of those are inhuman practices, are absolute atrocities, but we do it like these atrocities happen in so-called civilization just as much as they happen in, or can happen in, a less civilized culture. And this is important to understand because we, from like a more I don't know, in some parts of society we tend to have a more relativistic approach to these kind of cultures, and decide that some rituals are worth like keeping or whatever, and should not be destroyed by us from the outside. And while that may be is certainly true for some things and some traditions, but first of all, humanity changes over time, and second, yes, atrocities are atrocities, and justifying them with being a tradition is not the way to go about it. So I feel it's important to see that we first show these like mechanisms of power, these character traits that we see there with these power hungry madmen, or women in this case. We first see that in with, for example, the Lethery Empire in Reaper's Gale, but we then see that it's the same kind of thing that happens, in the Barghast camp with Sikara the Vile. It's just that like each of them choose the abhorrent parts of their cultural background and their cultural tradition to wreak their vengeance, their like not only vengeance, but to wreak, indulge their power games. And both of those are atrocious, and we should not, say, "Oh, what happens in Letheras is absolutely abominable and should be abolished." Yes, it should. But then to go and like, yeah, but those Barghast are, this old traditional culture, and we have to be careful there. No, we don't have to. Mutilating women is not good, whether it is, traditional or not, which, comes back once again to that other idea that we had with female genital mutilation that we had in House of Chains. Those things are objectively wrong, and they can't be justified by anything. But it's also important to be aware that those are part of human nature. Inflicting these kind of things is part of human nature in a way. So that's sort of where I wanted to go with this. We also see once again that difficulty of the warrior society of the Barghast, where everything is laid out on, success in war. The entire like civilization is built on that. How it's very difficult to adapt to altered circumstances, because apparently they're up against something that also frightens the living hell out of a bunch of Kachain Chimal, and there's not much that can do that. So, but the Barghast will still decide to go and fight that because they're warriors. They need to fight and fuck the consequences. So yeah, I guess the rigidity of like certain cultures can be their downfall, can be a huge problem. Yes. So that's sort of the Barghast bit that I wanted to talk about, but not much. We also see, like, the way that Caliph, when we talk about the Kachin Chamal crew, the way she interposes herself between her group of Kachin Chamal and the assassin when they were fleeing from the whatever. Shows that she's more and more accepting her role, I guess, or taking responsibility for stuff that happens to the Kachin Chamal, which is a good thing, I think. But I didn't want to go much deeper into that. All right, let's have us a look at the Sheikh. They have built a road to somewhere. Just a minor thing that I found interesting, that in the beginning of the book they're always talking about the road to Galan, and now they're talking about the road of Galan, and I'm like, well, I kind of know where that comes from. That gets explained later in the book, but I'm not sure if like the to Galan makes sense in that context, or was just a mistake or misreading or whatever, an editing error, or if they just changed their mind halfway through the book when they realized something that has not been mentioned in the book yet. I don't know. Just wanted to put that out there. The chain from Road to Galan to Road of Galan is a bit weird. But the important bit there is we get, on the one hand, the idea of how power can be addictive when we see how Pulley and Squish are taking far too much of Yantova's blood, and it makes them even younger and more beautiful and so forth. And they just don't realize the consequences of that, which is just another one of those facets of addictions, like how we tend to become very greedy. And then obviously the main thing is we see what a badass Yenan Derek is when he just rides off into somewhere in Corel Liosan and just kills, just coldly kills a Forkroll assail, which, I don't know, Karsar Orlon couldn't do that, so, or didn't try at least. So there's that. Like, either that one was just like really not very good at it, or Yenan Derek is just one hell of a badass, which, he then goes and kills Five Tist Leosan. Then, so far, we haven't seen Tistliosan be the absolute badasses that they might also be, because that other crew was more of a. You remember in House of Chains? Is that House of Chains? Yeah, that's House of Chains. Um, the ones that meet with and try to kill Onrak and so forth, they're sort of more of a running gang at that point in House of Chains, but I don't know. I feel that this time it's less their stupidity and more Yeden Derek's badassery. So yeah, we have those power games going on within the Shake, which that's the other bit. There's like this. This is like one of those why we as humans suck so much. Like even in like the worst straits possible, the most critical situation, those damn idiots can't stop, plotting their power plays, the witches, and on the other hand, Yantoviz and Yeda and Derek. And yeah, that's human nature for you. We just, at least some of us can't actually set these like things aside. We just keep on doing that shit. So yeah. But we'll see where this is going from here on out. I have more thoughts on the shake, but I guess that was something that will happen later on in the book. So let's turn to our last group this time round. The Ghost, the Kachain Chamal, the Ghost of Featherwitch, of Rotos Hibana, of Taxilian, that whole crew, which, we have that casting of the new tiles. And I feel this is like the interesting bit. There's like so Featherwitch makes up new tiles for the holds, although they may just be for those new warrants that we have that Icarium created, because we're obviously still in Icarium's mind, influence, or whatever. And when you look at those, and this I feel is the interesting bit there, the ones she describes, she has also like a lot of these are opposing forces, which comes back to the thing we were talking about yesterday, or Caliph was talking about yesterday in that like discussion she had with Sak Churok. That idea of like you always have two poles, two polar opposites. Between you have tension, and you need that to have choice, and choice is important to have like, yeah, make us humans human in a way. So we have that there once again in all the tiles that she has. She has like knuckles that she changes into what we have with Opon, with like fortune and misfortune. You have light and dark, that you have either one of those. So you have these like opposites that we were talking yesterday about. These different like points of like between of tension, they are much more reflected on her tiles. Now, I'm not saying that those are like the tiles corresponding to Icarium's new warrants, because we don't know anything about Icarium's warrants. At least I don't. I just felt it's an interesting aspect. They're also hunted by someone, they feel. And we see that Icarium's mind as the ghost is like rediscovering more and more things and becoming more aware of himself. So we'll see how that goes in the next couple of chapters. Anyway, I feel that's it for me from me for today. I got a video conference now. I'll talk to you tomorrow about the rest of book 2 of Dust of Dreams, and then maybe we'll start with book 3 on Friday. We'll see. Until then, have a great Wednesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.